Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual DBT Cloud Launch Showcase event. My name is Jackie Jakai, and I will be kicking things off today. We're going to wait a few minutes to get started and let folks trickle in, but in the meantime, write in the chat where you are joining us from today. Okay, we'll let folks do that. And if you're just joining, type in the chat where you're joining us from, and then we will get started. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are super appreciative that you have taken time to spend some time with us, and you are in for a treat today. So before we begin, I want to share some housekeeping items to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Q&A. Please use the Q&A tab for all of your questions. A DBT product expert will answer them for you. Chat, that is just where you are posting where you're joining from. So use the chat tab for banter, connecting with others, and highlighting what you liked from the presentations today. Recording, we will be sending out the recording 24 hours after this event. And last but not least, the survey. We will launch a survey after this event. Please make sure you fill it out to let us know what you liked and where we can improve next time. Let's take a look at our speaker panel. We have Tristan Handy, co-founder and CEO of DBT Labs, Luis Maldonado, vice president of product at DBT Labs, and then our superstars, our product managers. So you're going to be hearing from Grace, Ruben, Cameron, Jordan, and Jeremy. For the agenda today, Tristan will share his high-level thoughts, and then we'll pass it off to Luis to ground us in how those trends are impacting our roadmap. And we'll spend the majority of the time today on the good stuff, all of the exciting new features in DBT Cloud. I will now pass it off to DBT Labs co-founder and CEO Tristan Handy to share his thoughts and observations on the analytics space, where we have been and where we are going. Thank you.
Hi, welcome. It's awesome to be here with you today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules, and I promise we have some great stuff to share with you. My job today is to frame the conversation, tell the story. Where are we going, and how do all the pieces fit together? Let me start here. We just completed our annual State of Analytics Engineering survey. And thank you to the many, many folks who took the time to complete it. The data that we got back has been incredibly valuable. I want to share a couple of things we learned with you. First thing, and this is kind of awesome. This is maybe my favorite single thing we learned in the entire survey. If you look on the right-hand side of this graph, what do you find the most challenging while preparing data for analysis? The lowest two bars on this graph are building data transformations and constraints on compute resources. So if you've been in the industry for a decade or more, what you would have seen 10 years ago is that those two bars would have been all the way on the left-hand side of this graph, and they would have been the highest. Because 10 years ago, transforming data was really hard, and we were constantly battling with the constraints on storage and compute. It turns out that, at least for the DBT community, who tends to be more cloud-centric and certainly tends to use DBT, these problems have gone to basically gone away over the last 10 years. And that is real progress. Now, certainly, there are problems that we still all have today, data quality, stakeholder data literacy, et cetera. But I think that we should really be proud and celebrate what we've accomplished together. This is my second favorite thing in the entire survey. ChatGPT came out, 18 months ago, something like that. And the conversation at every dinner party, whether you're in data or not, has turned to AI. And if you ask me, what did I think the responses to this question? Does your DBT using team currently manage data for AI model training? I don't know. I would have guessed 10 to 20%, something like that. It turns out that if you add up the people who are already doing this today, over 30%, and the people who fully anticipate that their teams will be doing this by the end of the year, you get almost 60% of DBT users who are managing data for AI model training. I mean, that is impressive. I would not have anticipated how quickly this was going to truly impact data professionals. So AI is clearly happening, and it's impacting almost all of us already. It's a lot faster than I would have thought. And again, for those of us working in data over the past decade, we have seen some pretty dramatic changes. We've moved to the cloud, we've transitioned to ELT, we've checked out a bunch of legacy tools and workflows, and we've started applying software engineering best practices to our day-to-day work. And while this cloud transition is still playing out, AI is going to be the big next change in our lives as data professionals. The changes we'll see over the coming years will be just as dramatic as those we've seen play out over the past decade. We also asked our survey respondents how they anticipated AI would impact their work. And we suggested a bunch of potential categories: writing code, testing, debugging, monitoring and alerting, data analysis, facilitating self-service, and documentation. What I see in the responses we got is a broad consensus that AI will impact our work, but an admission that we don't know exactly how yet. If you ask me my personal belief, I think that AI is going to improve how data professionals work across every single one of these dimensions. But not only is AI going to power your new workflow, the data that you and your teams produce is going to power downstream AI experiences and apps. This recent survey from Tableau should be a surprise to exactly none of us. The data you feed into a model is garbage. Your results are also garbage. Shocker. But it might be worse than that, because with AI, hallucinations can sometimes be quite hard to spot. And this lack of trust undercuts the entire AI effort. This is why data leaders who are invested in the AI future care so much about having a robust data capability. And that requires a data control plane. The control plane is a governance layer across all of the components of the existing data stack. It helps with things like orchestration, data cataloging, data quality, metrics definitions, lineage, and cost monitoring. Back in 2021, when new data companies were getting founded and raising VC money every day, conventional wisdom was that these boxes on top would end up being their own categories, with multiple pure play vendors duking it out. The assumption was that every one of you would assemble a stack with a dozen or more data products in it. I don't know. From where we sit in 2024, I don't think that's how this story is going to play out. Our perspective is that these categories will not be separate. They'll be integrated together into a single platform. And that is what we are building with DBT Cloud. We think this for a few reasons. Buyers today just don't want to manage a dozen or more vendor relationships. It turns out that some of these categories are not actually big enough to support large independent companies. Under the surface, most of these products are very similar. They're all fundamentally built on metadata. And finally, AI prefers centralized context, and the control plane has all of the context about your data. Today, you're going to hear us talk a lot about the control plane and how what we've shipped gets us closer every single day to that vision. Okay, I'm going to pass it off to Luis. Luis will bring us back down to earth and talk about how our near-term product roadmap brings us closer to our vision of the data control plane so that you can deliver data that works. And from there, we'll jump into today's announcements. Thanks for hanging out today. And please message me on DBT Slack if you want to chat about anything we cover. I'd love to hear from you. Luis, over to you.
Thanks, Tristan. It's always fascinating to get your take on the market and future ahead of us. And I love the control plane framing. It provides such a great model for how our customers should be thinking about their data management architecture and investments. So before diving into today's announcements, I'd first like to take a few minutes to outline our approach to delivering product innovations that address our customers' key pain points and help them deliver data that works. We've been focused on 3 dimensions of innovation. First is the dimension of quality. We know that data quality is critical for your business use cases, and we're here to help our practitioners build pipelines with the highest quality possible. As a direct owner of business-critical pipelines, you need to give your stakeholders the confidence that they can trust the accuracy, consistency, and timeliness of the data you provide, whether they're using it to populate a BI dashboard, produce domain data products, or to power new generative AI models. Data quality is the foundation for success in any data initiative, and we're investing in new features that will help you accelerate your transformation development work, expand your testing capabilities, and simplify your validation workflows. These new features will help you catch and fix quality issues before pipeline changes are even deployed, avoiding the time and headache spent in debugging and chasing down issues. You'll have more confidence in the quality of your data products and earn the trust of your business stakeholders and data consumers. In just a moment, Grace will provide you with a very entertaining view into this expanding area of our platform. Now, in addition to being of high quality, data also needs to be complete and comprehensive. Your data consumers require a holistic view of your business data to give them the context needed to make decisions. We refer to this dimension as having connections. That is, connections between all your sources and syncs that provide a complete picture. Now, to achieve a full level of connection, your data control plane must provide consistent and secure access to all of your key data platforms, full traceability of where data comes from and how it's being used downstream. It also needs to provide granular controls for synchronizing data availability and freshness between sources and consumers. We're delivering new capabilities in all of these dimensions, giving you the access, visibility, and control you need to provide your consumers with a complete, up-to-date view into your full data estate. Following Grace, Ruben will be talking about the latest improvements to our DAG and connectivity, as well as give you a peek into what's coming next. And our final dimension is collaboration. It's important not to lose sight of the fact that all of these efforts in data quality, in developer efficiency, in automation, and even more, are in service of the business. That means that it's critical that data is trusted, accessible, and usable by your downstream stakeholders so your organization can use it to build competitive advantage. We're going to show you a host of exciting new innovations that unlock the value of data across your business and give more stakeholders, regardless of their technical aptitude, governed inroads to working with data in their day-to-day workflows. You'll hear from Cam, Jeremy, and Jordan about our newest capabilities that empower even more stakeholders with trusted data, including the ability to build and test models from a variety of coding or low-code development environments, more ways to query consistent metrics from end-user visualization tools, and new facilities that'll help you build a collaborative data mesh architecture. We're really excited to share our latest developments in the DBT control plane, designed to help you deliver data that works. We hope you enjoyed today's presentations and can't wait to hear your feedback. Now, let's get to the announcements.
I inherited what you would typically call a lot of data chaos. Where DBT essentially comes into play and helps is, along with the data quality, we are now able to actually, I would say, functionally create data pipelines that are really reliable.
If leadership is having a conversation, the conversation is not around why is my data different than your data, right? What's important to us is knowing that the conversation is around what does the data actually mean? What's the story that's being told there? And so data quality is making sure that everyone has the exact same information at their fingertips that then they probably most importantly trust. Yeah, I think DBT Cloud is foundational. And so we are mandating, we're asking everyone in the business to adopt this technology, not because we're telling them to do it, but because the benefits are going to allow them to work faster, more efficiently, and take more advantage of their data.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grace Goheen, and I'm a product manager at DBT Labs. And after a series of wild and fantastical events that I won't get into, I recently became the newest owner of the Willy Wonka Chocolate Factory. I'm taking the baton from good old Timothy Chalamet, and let's just say the transition period has been a bit bumpy so far. It turns out the past Wonkas were disorganized. Most of their data was stored on handwritten post-it notes scattered around the factory. I want to bring stability and reliability to all of this chaos. If I can't trust my data, my recipes or distribution could be all wrong. It takes very precise ingredients to make a gobstopper everlasting. If I can't find my data, I won't be able to make data-driven decisions. How will I know if I should invest in new gum flavors or new mix-ins to my chocolate bars? Thankfully, I'm not like the other Wonkas because I'm an expert in DBT. So I'm going to use DBT Cloud to make sure our small but mighty factory is producing the most scrumdiddlyumptious candy products, backed by data, of course. And there's a few brand new features that will help me ensure the quality of my data outputs, including DBT Assist, generate documentation and tests using AI, DBT Cloud CLI, where I can develop in DBT Cloud locally and access my favorite VS Code extensions, Advanced CI, so I can deploy PRs with confidence that they do what's expected, and unit testing, test your modeling logic before building. So come with me into my DBT Cloud project. Now, you may notice this new navigation on the left-hand side. In the coming weeks, you'll start to see these small changes to make it easier to quickly find and move between different parts of DBT Cloud. Now, I've only just begun my DBT journey, so I've added a model to track my candy orders and some initial customer info. But now I want to add a new customer's dimensions model to calculate my customer metrics. DBT Cloud offers me the flexibility to develop in my project in different ways, depending on my skill set and preferences. So the Cloud IDE is powerful, but also simple to use and has convenient guardrails for folks that may be a little bit less technical. So I'm going to start there. Now, as I'm developing, you'll notice that parse times are now significantly faster because of some improvements that we've made under the hood of DBT Cloud. All right, so I'm going to create a brand new MARTS model called dim customers. So we'll create a new file, name it dim customers. And then with a little bit of special Wonka magic, also known as copy and paste, I'm going to instantly write the SQL logic. So I'm calculating some new metrics for my customers, like how many orders they've placed over their lifetimes, as well as whether or not they're a golden ticket winner. Now, because I'm a responsible contributor, I want to add documentation and tests to this model. I can use the brand new DBT Assist feature to use AI to automatically generate my documentation and tests for me. So I'm going to start by generating my documentation. And I can see this is creating a description for my model, as well as for each column within my model. Previously, this could be somewhat time consuming. I would need to handwrite all of this YAML to properly define my fields. But I've got a factory to run. I don't have time for that. All right, I like how that looks. So I'm going to go ahead and save that file. And then next, I'm going to use DBT Assist to automatically generate my tests. And this is going to inject tests into the same YAML file based on the current data outputs. This is great. It recognized my customer ID was my primary key and added a unique and not null test, and added some other not null and accepted value tests as well. All right, once my tests and documentation have been added, I'm feeling really good about this model, so I'm going to go ahead and commit my changes to a new branch. So we'll call this Wonka demo. And we'll add a message. So added dim customers model. All right. Next, I'm going to take advantage of dbt Cloud's flexibility and developer experience by swapping over to the Cloud CLI. The Cloud CLI allows you to develop locally using your code editor of choice and custom workflows that you might want to use. It's typically a better fit for a more technical contributor, and the Cloud CLI is now generally available. And if you use VS Code like I'm doing here, we significantly improve the experience by enabling dbt Power User extension to work with dbt Cloud. Okay, so I'm going to check out the same branch from earlier. So I'll check out Wonka's demo. And what was it called? Wonka's dash demo. Let's pull from main. There we go. And then we're going to check out that branch. All right, there we go. I've got my new branch in so I can see my dim customers model. And I'm going to go ahead and query the results here using that VS Code dbt Power User extension. All right, and I'll take a look at the results here. And this is interesting. This is not quite what I would expect. I know Charlie Bucket and Mike TV received golden tickets because I've seen the movies, but this is golden ticket winner is false. Well, it looks like this is golden ticket winner depends on, let's see, whether or not they've made an order that contained a golden ticket. So let's actually swap over to fact orders and preview these results. So if I look at the preview and the logic and fact orders, I can see that does contain golden ticket is case sensitive, right? It's checking whether or not my candy type is exactly equal to lowercase bar. But my candy types actually have mixed case. They've got a capital B here, right? Now I can use the brand new unit test functionality to write a test for how I would expect this does contain golden ticket logic to behave. Unit tests provide the ability to validate your modeling logic on a small set of static inputs before you materialize your full model in production. Okay, I'm going to create a new YAML file to write my unit test in. And I'm going to use my very special Wonka magic of copy paste from earlier to instantly write my new unit test. So in my unit test block, I've given this unit test a name as well as a description. And then I've identified the model that I want to unit test. So in this case, that's fact orders. But the real meat of this test is the static inputs and expected outputs. So for each direct parent of fact orders, in this case, that's going to be stage orders and stage candies, I've defined a set of mock input data to define all of the edge cases I can think of. So orders that are selected as a golden ticket candidate and those that are not, and candies that are bars, making sure I account for mixed case, and candies that are not bars. And then when this model is run using this mock input data instead of the real stage orders and stage candies, what do I expect the output to be? Now you may notice that I only have to define mock data for the columns that I care about, which enables me to write succinct and specific unit tests. Okay, I'm ready to run this unit test. So I'm going to go ahead and do a dbt build for my fact orders model. And this is going to first run the unit test for this model. Now, I know my logic is currently not working, so my unit test is going to fail, which then actually causes the rest of the run steps to be skipped. So my model won't be materialized and my data tests won't run. This ensures that I'm optimizing my warehouse spin by not wasting compute building a model that has incorrect logic. Now, looking at the logs, I can see for that order ID 1, I expect does contain golden ticket to be true, but actually it's false. Okay, let's go ahead and fix my logic here. So I'm going to update this does contain golden ticket to first lowercase the candy type before evaluating whether or not it's equal to BAR. All right, and once I save that, I'm going to go ahead and rebuild my model. And this time a unit test should pass, and so everything else will run as well. There we go. Success in the unit test, everything else is success as well. Now, I want to make a few other final changes I want to actually remove this days since ordered column from my model. I decided that I don't really want that anymore. And then I've also just want to add a quick filter to my stage orders to exclude orders that have a null candy ID. So where candy ID is not null. And I'll save that as well. Okay, I'm ready to commit all these changes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We'll say updated fact orders logic and commit. And I'll push them up to my branch. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up a pull request. All right, so I'll go ahead and create a pull request. And this is going to actually kick off a DBT Cloud CI job. So historically, our recommended strategy for validating your PR code changes before merging them into production was to set up this like slim CI job in DBT Cloud, which is essentially just a special type of job that when you open up a PR, it does a DBT build for all of your modified models and their downstream dependencies and builds them into a temporary schema that's unique to the given PR. That's all great, right? It's going to ensure that your code will actually run against your warehouse, preventing truly broken code from being merged into production. But there may be some other things that you want to validate about your PR to make sure it's production ready. Sure, I can tell that it builds, but does it build the thing that I want? Well, DBT has been working on a new set of advanced CI features to help customers ensure code reliability by answering the question, is this PR actually really ready for prod? So my CI job just completed, and I can see that we've got this new CI report that's commented onto my PR that gives me a summary of my quality checks that were run in DBT Cloud. So it looks like I ran that classic slim CI job, got a warning that I might want to investigate. I've also added a new quality check to my CI job called compare changes, which gives me information on how my changes are impacting the actual data outputs. So we've got some information here in the PR comment, but we're really going to want to hop over to DBT Cloud to see the full view. All right, so we've got this new tab here called Compare that helps me understand what I'm actually changing with this pull request. So I can see that I've added a handful of tests, as well as that brand new DIM customers model. I've also modified stage orders and fact orders. So for stage orders, looks like I've got a primary key change. I'm missing one primary key from CI when I'm comparing that to prod. And if I look at the preview here, I can see that was an order ID 16, which had a candy ID null that I filtered out. And then if I take a look at fact orders as well, I can see that I've had a little bit of value change here. If I look at the preview, I can see that I've got two orders with that mixed case candy type, capital B, a capital BAR, that now contain a golden ticket when previously they did not. If I look at the columns, I can also see that I removed that day since ordered column, which shifted around the position of some of these columns as well. So compare changes will help my data team speed up our QA process because I can easily see how a PR actually affects the data outputs, ensuring I don't accidentally introduce unintended behavior. All right, I'm going to return now to my day job as a product manager of DBT to announce that you too can get access to this golden ticket set of features to improve the quality of your DBT project. So DBT Assist is now in beta. DBT Cloud CLI is generally available. Advanced CI features are coming very soon, and unit testing is now available in DBT Core version 1.8. Speaking of, I wanted to take a minute to dive a little bit deeper on what's new in DBT Core. So we are invested in making DBT Cloud the best experience possible for DBT development. And also, we take our responsibility as stewards of open source very seriously. So I'm incredibly excited about the newest version of DBT Core, which we just released last week. And I want to highlight a few of my favorite new features. All right, to start us off, DBT adapters and DBT Core have been decoupled. So this new stable interface for adapters will be forward compatible for future versions. So if you want to use DBT Core version 1.x with DBT Postgres version 1.y, you will be able to. As mentioned previously, test coverage has expanded to include unit testing. So you can now validate your SQL modeling logic on a small set of static inputs before materializing your model. We've also added a new empty flag for the DBT run and build commands, which you can use to build schema-only dry runs to validate your dependencies and SQL code. Running source freshness checks is now massively more performant. DBT now issues a single batch query when calculating source freshness through metadata instead of executing a query per source. And finally, flags have been introduced for managing changes to legacy behaviors. So you can opt into recently introduced changes or opt out of mature changes. All right, thank you so much for going on this journey with me to improve the quality of my chocolate factories data.
So control plane for our organization would mean really first and foremost the governance of the data. When I am promoting data literacy within my organization for my stakeholders, understanding the lineage of the data is pretty important for them. I want to give everybody the data that is very relevant to their own questions, so to speak, of the day.
How do we ensure that changes are made are complete, they're accurate, they're auditable? And so DBT, with the features of lineage, the discovery API, the catalog itself, docs, makes it a lot easier to understand the flow of data from raw unstructured data to curated data that our CFO or CEO might be looking at. And so what would be really, really cool is seeing a technology that can integrate, adopt, consume these other tools and be able to be a one-stop shop for data control, data access, data observability, and data operationalization.
Hi everyone, I'm Ruben and I'm here to talk to you about connections. And where this really starts is we think that in order for data to be useful, it needs to be complete. And that means you should be able to view your entire data estate and really trace and orchestrate your data all the way from the sources where that data comes in through to the exposures where your data is kind of consumed across the business. And that also means that you should be able to bring dbt Cloud to wherever your data is stored, whether that's in Snowflake or Azure or anywhere else. And so I'm really excited to talk you through some of the exciting innovations that the team has been building that make all of this possible across dbt Cloud. And where this really begins is in the DAG. And so we believe that the DAG is sort of the heart and soul of what makes all of those data workflows possible. And in creating that view of the data dependencies and the lineage and the relevant context is really what allows you to build those powerful transformations that feed data across your business. But we also know that there's always room to improve the usefulness of the DAG, and that all of these models you're building across staging, MART, and fact models really inform some sort of team or decision or downstream dashboard. And that in order to kind of extend the lineage of the DAG, we really want to show you that important context on the right of what dashboards and how often and who they're used by. And so with that in mind, we launched exposures a couple of years back, and these have been really useful in sort of linking those models that are producing the data through to the places that data is used. And so whether that's an AI or ML model or an operations workflow or a downstream Tableau dashboard, is really allow you to link up those models to the places that data is consumed. But we've also had some feedback on these exposures, right? We know that they're a little manual in that you really have to know where and how the data is being used in order to link it up to that model, that you can't really use them to make sure your data is always fresh by actively triggering things based on these exposures, and that if you go and create a new dashboard or edit an existing one, there's some reconfiguration required to go and either edit that exposure directly or go and add a new one. And so really, you will know that this data is driving a whole bunch of dashboards and extracts and powering data across the business, but it's really hard to know where to start to understand how that data is actually being used and who's actually using that data without going through all of those exposures one by one. And so this is the problem that the team and I were really excited to help solve. And I'm really excited to introduce the idea of active exposures. And so what these are is really a direct integration from dbt Cloud through to the place where your data is being consumed, starting with the beta in Tableau in mid-July, with Power BI being the next one we tackle. And what these really allow you to do is connect through to the place where that data is being consumed and bring through automatically all of the exposures, and then allow us to figure out which models are using them and how you can use that across dbt Cloud. And then in using that, there's really 3 areas we think are going to be really powerful. It's first of all in providing that end-to-end visibility, which I know Cam is going to get into some more with Explore, but really about understanding how can we understand better which models are being consumed most by the business and which are powering which use cases, so that you invest your time and effort and money in the places that will have the biggest impact. In orchestration, what we really want to allow you to do is ensure that those dashboards always reflect the latest data by having those update based on when your models are finished processing. And then finally, in CI, we really want to allow you to see the impact of those model changes on those downstream dashboards where the data is being consumed. And so when you go to make a change, you'll know automatically, like, is the CFO's dashboard or your company's revenue potentially going to be directly affected by the code change you're making, and allow you to do all of this across your dbt projects automatically. And so without further ado, let's jump into a demo in our prototype. And so, yeah, jumping into our prototype here, you can kind of see we want to help out Grace and Mr. Wonka and team a little with their Wonka analytics, and really understand through all those models they're creating, how is that actually being consumed across the Wonka business. And so to start out with, we can jump in and configure our Tableau integration. And so adding the server URL and the token value is going to allow us to automatically sync through the Tableau and pull through all of those exposures. And so hitting continue there, we can kind of see what are all the collections that we have in our Tableau environment, with the idea that, you know, maybe there's 1,000 different exposures there, but we're not going to want to bring through anything in Wonka's personal collection, anything highly experimental, because these are subject to change and are not really things that are ready yet to show in our DAG lineage view and introduce unnecessary sort of clutter to our overall analytics. And so we can go and save that configuration, and then jumping through, kind of see that end-to-end lineage and understand not just what are sort of our fact and dimension tables, but also like what are the downstream exposures that are powering those fact and dimension tables. And so we can see that those fact customer orders and those fact marketing campaigns are actually being used anywhere from Wonka 360 through our marketing campaign spend and our waterfall monitoring. And so now that we have those exposures automatically being brought into dbt Cloud, the next thing we want to think through is how can I have my models then go and trigger those exposures so they can always be up to date as soon as my data is fresh. And so if we jump back to production here, we can then go into our new syncs tab. I see we don't have anything set up at the moment, so we'll go and create a new sync. And in that new sync, we're going to call this Tableau on merge. We're going to sync and refresh our Tableau dashboards. We can set this to run on model update, so it'll automatically refresh these connected dashboards whenever the models are updated. And then we can throttle these updates so that if these have already been updated in the past hour, we're not going to simply go and update them again. And so scrolling down a little bit, we can select sort of what are the most important collections. Sorry, what are the most important dashboards we want to actually refresh in this selection, right? And so we might want to select our Wonka 360 as well, and perhaps that Fudge Mellow sales tracking. And then whenever these models that power these dashboards are updated, we'll save this configuration so that these underlying extracts, which then power the dashboards, are going to be updated at the same time. Now that we have this new sync set up, we can go through to our sync, and we can go see that the sync has been running successfully. And then we can go into our exposures and look at the status of all those things that we've actually asked it to update. And so we see that Wonka 360 was successful, we see there's perhaps a warning on our order tracking we should investigate, and we see that error on the golden ticket winners, which, given the trouble Mr. Wonka was having earlier with Charlie Bucket and, some of those golden ticket winners, it makes sense that we can now reflect the problems we're having in our data through to the place where that data is then being consumed. Finally, the part we're really excited to build is this view of, as you go and make these code changes, as Grace kind of showed us in advanced CI, what are the dashboards that are connected to those code changes that might be impacted? And so if we jump back to production and then go down to our CI job, we can jump into this CI job and then in addition to this advanced CI, also see what are the potential downstream impacts of the places where this data is being consumed. And so, yeah, we're really excited to bring you this with automatic exposures, starting with Tableau, with Power BI to follow after that. And we really think this will provide a way of bringing in that downstream context and really expanding that end-to-end lineage of that so important DAG. To give you a bit of a teaser on what we're working on next, when we think about sort of that end-to-end lineage and providing those end-to-end orchestration capabilities, we also know we have room to improve in the active sources. And so we know a lot of people really just want their data as soon as it's fresh, right? And so as soon as those sources have finished syncing, you really want to go through and be able to run all of your models downstream from those sources. And so there's really two ways people do that at the moment. The first is by taking a time-based guess, right? And so if you know your sources are usually ready by 9 a.m., then you can set a 9:30 job to go and run, and 9 times out of 10, that works really well. And on that 10th time, where perhaps there was an error overnight, right, and your sources didn't update, you end up with stale data across the business, and hopefully you figure that out before someone in the business does. Sort of that second way is you can say, I want my data to always be fresh, and so I'm going to run a job every hour. And that works really well when you have small data, but as your data gets bigger and your data warehouse gets bigger, you're kind of using a lot of unnecessary compute to go and run that same job every hour, even when the data may not have changed in between. And so what we really want to do is bring that active source context into your orchestration so that you can go and look at the last time those sources actually did refresh, and then use that with conditional logic to say, only go and run my downstream jobs when my source data has been updated. And so we're really excited to talk some more about this in the coming months after we finish building those automatic exposures. I guess moving on to another really exciting development in connections. When we think about the concept of connections, it's important to not only bring more data to dbt, but also to bring dbt to wherever it is your data lives. And so last fall, we launched Microsoft adapters for dbt Cloud. And we're excited to kind of build on that momentum and all the feedback we've heard from the Microsoft community in bringing the Azure Synapse adapter, which is now in preview, to dbt, and then moving our Microsoft Fabric adapter to GA. And we already have hundreds of customers that are using dbt Fabric in dbt Cloud, and we're excited to build even more connections with the launch of Synapse. And in order to go and set this up, all you really need to do is go and create a new project and then select either Synapse or Fabric as your data warehouse. Finally, in connections, we want to talk a bit about the ways we allow users to connect into dbt Cloud with the launch of Databricks OAuth. And so we originally introduced this last October, and we're excited to announce that it's now in GA. And so dbt Cloud really supports developers with OAuth with Databricks by providing that additional layer of enterprise security to all of dbt's users. And when you enable Databricks OAuth for a dbt Cloud project, all of your dbt developers will authenticate directly with Databricks in order to use the Cloud IDE. And this kind of removes the need to manage any credentials in dbt Cloud. And so with this addition, we now bring authentication via OAuth to Snowflake, BigQuery, and Databricks, and we look forward to continuing adding to this list. So yeah, want to say thanks for all your time today. We're really excited for these new innovations and to get these into the hands of all of you, our customers, and bring dbt Cloud to wherever it is you work.
It was a challenging world to live in pre-dbt to be a data analyst. It really was. It was not a fun job.
I mean, companies are really, really good at collecting data, especially in this day and age. I think it's a lot harder to make it useful, right? And so we want to make it useful for analysts, for developers, for the C-suite to take action with that data. What's really, really important is understanding the business problems, building a data product that allows people to understand those problems, represent reality, represent what the business is doing, and dbt is a key piece of that.
I'm making sure that we can deploy some of the models that we have created as frameworks and give it to the business analysts. One, gives a standard way of interacting with data. And two, is really helping my team focus on what are most important things, is going behind and bringing in data from various sources. And third, very important, is businesses actually recognizing the value of the centralized data store as being standard, and they are actually building confidence within the data.
Data ownership and velocity go hand in hand. So we are building a tool or a set of platforms with dbt at its core that allow people to move more quickly and be data engineers without having to know all the stuff that we know. I think there is an unspoken benefit to a tool that you bring on and it kind of delights you. And I can only think of a few tools in my entire experience in the data space that are like delightful, and dbt is definitely one of those.
Hi, I'm Cameron, product manager for dbt Cloud's metadata platform. Data is a means to an end, and that end is always driven by the business. Data needs to be accessible to anyone in the organization that would use it to make decisions. It can't just live in tables in your data platform that only the technical teams can leverage. To unlock the value of data across your organization, more stakeholders need to be able to participate in data workflows, whether that means reusing or refining models from platform teams, querying metrics in their favorite visualization tool, or tracing how that metric was calculated. You need a variety of inroads to that data to enable more people to actually use it. It all starts with discovery and trust. We launched dbt Explorer last October at Coalesce. Explorer surfaces all of the rich metadata from your dbt Cloud project, so you can easily discover, reuse, and improve trusted data assets. We're proud of the progress we've made in the past 6 months and the impact Explorer is having on data teams and their stakeholders. Explorer reaches over 3,500 users weekly across over 1,400 active customers. We've already processed 48 million columns since the column lineage release. And today we're excited to share that dbt Explorer is officially in GA, including column-level lineage. We're building towards the vision of a shared canvas for dbt developers and analysts to come together and drive the ROI of their data. Our journey to GA included steps to help data teams understand, troubleshoot, and improve their data pipelines, making it easier for stakeholders to discover and analyze trusted data. We'll continue to advance new features like column-level lineage, model performance analysis, project recommendations, and improve search and lineage. Data teams working in dbt Cloud already find Explorer essential for their analytics workflows. All right, let's see a demo. As a dbt developer, I want to see what models are available, how they're used, and whether I can trust them. I'll use Explorer to understand, troubleshoot, and improve our data assets. First, I open up multi-project lineage for my account, and I understand which project to use. This data analytics project looks like the right one for me. So I'm going to open up this project, and I'm looking for production data related to orders. So I can search across all of the different resources within this project, filter by models, and really just hone in on marts. Now that I found a model, I can look at its information, understand its lineage, and look at the code that defines it as well. So I'm interested in understanding the broader lineage of this model. So I can zoom out and really understand where does the data come from and where is it used. I can look at it within the broader context of the project as well. What are all of the different data assets defined? And I can understand how they're defined and how they're run. I'm also interested in understanding more about the order items. So here I found a model that I can examine further. So now that I'm in this model, I'm interested in understanding more about how costs are calculated. So I'll search for costs within the columns, and I found supplier cost here. So here I can trace the column lineage all the way back to the source. I can troubleshoot and resolve issues in the source data and beyond. So let's zoom out a little bit and understand how is the source data used across the project. All right, looks like this part supply data is used throughout the project. And I can see based on test results, there's a model here that has failing tests. So I'm going to investigate and better understand how can I improve data quality for this model and for our stakeholders. Let's get the broader context first, though. Are there any other models with failing runs or failing tests? And it really looks like it's this one, accounting for all of the failures. So now we can look at how it's changed over time. It's been pretty consistent. This test has been failing for quite some time, and it's time for us to go fix it. So let's go look at the test that's defined on top of this model. We can open up the test information here. We can see that it's failing, and we can look at its definition. So it's based on a couple of different columns here. So we can go back to that model and investigate those columns. So let's open up the model again, and we'll open up column lineage. All right, so first return rate, and we can understand where does this column come from and what's going on here. So here we can see how the columns changed throughout the process. We can see where it's been transformed versus reused. And when it's reused, we can inherit the description here and understand where these columns are coming from. All right, looks like we have some room for improvement. Let's see some of the recommendations here, documentation, and a primary key test. So I think we found our next task. We'll go into the IDE. We're going to improve it all within dbt Cloud. We're able to understand what's available, where are the issues, troubleshoot those issues, and then ultimately go resolve the issue, all within one platform. Now let's look forward to what's coming next. Our vision for Explorer is that it helps both data producers and consumers drive the ROI of their data and time. That is, we want to inform high-quality decisions while keeping costs in check. So imagine this example. A business analyst reports the wrong revenue number, and we need to figure out how to prevent it in the future. How can we not break the CFO's dashboard, but also make it better? What metadata and experiences are needed? So as you likely know, dbt brings software engineering best practices to data. When a new software product is released, its usage is tracked. When a new marketing campaign is launched, its impact is measured. So it's time to bring that visibility to data products as well. We envision a mix of auto exposures, model query history, and tile embedding to help make that a reality. Earlier, Ruben introduced end-to-end connectivity, so dbt Cloud can automatically become aware of downstream data use cases. A natural place to navigate this enriched lineage is Explorer, where you'll be able to visualize the BI auto exposures, starting with Tableau. When we go to Explorer, we can see the dashboard with context about it. Building trust in data is essential for it to be used by stakeholders. That trust comes from consistency in data delivery with visibility to ensure the proper quality checks are in place. A benefit of using exposures is you can trace the lineage back to the models used in it, and I can troubleshoot a data quality issue by looking at the model's test results and their source's freshness. Explorer will also be enriched with new metrics like how much a given model is queried and which models are used most throughout the project. The usage of your data products by stakeholders is the best indicator of their value. By understanding how models are used, you can drive data ROI. Identify popular models and optimize their performance. Sunset and divest from unused models. Ensure quality and continuity with richer impact analysis, and unlock discovery to share your work with your organization. With model query history and auto exposures in dbt Explorer, you'll get a whole new layer of understanding to your data pipeline. Now that you can seamlessly visualize how the data products you're building and deploying are actually used across your organization. And coupled with exposures will be an embeddable tile that you can put in a dashboard so stakeholders can trust the data, value the team's work, know data health, and avoid issues. Now you can showcase your work and gain trust, meeting analysts where they are. And then seamlessly jump back into Explorer to investigate and resolve any issues with feedback loops to both development and consumption workflows. So these features will be part of a beta kicking off later this year. Stay tuned for news about that. We're really excited to continue the momentum with Explorer, fulfill the vision so customers can make dbt Cloud the best place for data teams to build, use, trust, and surface their data products. Now I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Jordan to share some exciting updates about the dbt semantic layer.
Thanks, Cam. Who's ready for the semantic layer update? Hey, everybody. I'm Jordan, a product manager on the semantic layer team. We GA'd the semantic layer last fall and have had some really exciting momentum these past 6 months, including a 600% growth in queried metrics since January. And we're building on that momentum by sharing new features and functionality today. It's been great working with our early customers to help them leverage the semantic layer to scale the impact of their data teams. Hans Nelson, the CDO at Brightside Health, said the semantic layer allows them to provide business users and customers with the data they need when and where they need it. We absolutely love to see it, and it's very validating for our mission to hear quotes like this from our customers. In planning our roadmap for the semantic layer, a top priority has been delivering what we call enterprise-ready features, the types of things you come to expect from your SaaS providers that give you the confidence to adopt and embrace the service at enterprise scale. We're focusing on 4 areas: access controls, security, caching, and integrations. Let's talk about access controls. You're investing in a semantic layer because you want to democratize data access across your company in a way that is accessible, governed, and streamlined. That means that certain people or departments should have access to certain data and should be precluded from viewing or querying other types of data. Trust me when I say we are very excited to introduce the concept of access controls to the dbt semantic layer. Today, we're pre-announcing a few enhancements that will give you more granularity, control, and precision to access controls within the semantic layer. Up until today, our semantic layer respects the physical policies that you've defined in your underlying data platform on a row and column level basis. But the limitation is that it only resolves to a single credential, which isn't realistic in practice. You want to support many users across various groups or departments with nuanced permissions and roles at these levels. And you need a solution that's flexible enough to meet your unique needs. Starting next month, you'll be able to create multiple credentials and map those to service tokens that can be used for downstream authentication. This means that as users from different groups across your company, like the data team, the sales team, or your marketing org, can query the semantic layer, they'll have curated access to only the underlying data that they are permitted to see for the group that they are associated with. From there, we'll be applying even more granularity to the semantic layer access at the user level. You'll have the option to either reuse the developer credentials you've already set in dbt Cloud, or you can customize your own semantic layer user credentials. This is expected to go into preview at the end of July. So what's next for access controls? Our medium-term roadmap, we're prioritizing new capabilities that make collaboration both more streamlined and intertwined with dbt Cloud. We plan to expand user-level access to more than just dbt Cloud users so that any downstream data consumer can quickly and easily interact with the semantic layer. Secondly, we plan to incorporate logical access controls beyond physical access of what underlying data can be queried into the semantic layer. Predicated on this, we plan for the semantic layer to be interoperable with dbt Mesh so that the governance and access rules you've configured in Mesh will be extended to the consumption of the semantic layer. More on the topic of enterprise support. We're further unifying the semantic layer experience with the underlying dbt Cloud experience with the GA of SSO and Private Link. You can now develop against and test the semantic layer in the Cloud CLI with your developer credentials using SSO. Unifying semantic layer development with model development is an important step in the maturity of the semantic layer and creating a cohesive experience with the rest of the dbt platform. The semantic layer now supports using Private Link for customers who have it enabled. This is important for customers with sensitive data that cannot pass through the public internet. More tightly integrating the semantic layer experience with the rest of dbt Cloud is essential as we mature our offering, and we're excited about these quality of life improvements and the productivity that they unlock. We are also thrilled to announce that caching is now GA for the semantic layer. We shipped 2 layers of caching, result caching and declarative caching. Result caching leverages your data platform's built-in cache, so the same query request will be faster on subsequent runs. Declarative caching gives you even more power and control to explicitly pre-warm the cache for your most relevant business metrics. Let me walk you through a quick demo to show you the declarative cache in action. Let's pretend that I'm the VP of revenue for the Jaffle Shop. I look at a KPI dashboard every week to prepare for a weekly business review. We're going to do a head-to-head speed test to see how the same dashboard performs with and without caching. I've disabled the built-in hex caching and I'm running these queries in a new Snowflake session to make sure I'm not hitting the Snowflake result cache. This should be a true test of the declarative cache in the semantic layer. So I'm going to go ahead and publish the changes on these dashboards and open up that dashboard in a new tab. Okay, so we're going to see how long this takes to load. So I'll start my timer. There's a bit of latency that's introduced from Hex as it starts up its app, but it looks like the components are now loading. So I should see, oh, there we go. I see weekly orders, weekly revenue, but this orders by city tile seems to be taking longer to load. Oh, there we go. We have a spinner in Hex that's come up. At this point, I'm starting to get a bit annoyed. I need this data for my weekly business review. At this point, maybe I just don't get the data, or maybe I go to another source that loads faster, but maybe isn't as accurate. There we go. So the data did finally finish loading. It took about 42 seconds to load. And I would say this latency really isn't acceptable for a dashboard that's this important and used this often by your organization. Next, we're going to test the same dashboard, but using the semantic layer cache. So I have the same dashboard that's querying the semantic layer, but I've set it to read from the cache that I've populated for the metrics in this dashboard. So we'll go ahead and publish this dashboard, restart my timer, and see how long this one takes to load. So like I said, Hex is now starting up. So there's a bit of latency introduced there. And we are starting to load our components. Oh, there we go. Looks like everything loaded. So that took about 15 seconds versus 42 for the last dashboard. So, you know, about a 3x speed up from introducing caching. That is hugely significant and really good for the user experience. And now I just want to show you in the Snowflake console how much latency we're actually cutting out by introducing the cache for these metrics. So here is that count of orders by city, which is reading from this cache table that's been created in our warehouse. And you can see that this query took only 571 milliseconds to return. Now that same query that's reading from the source data here took 29 seconds to return, and that's where a lot of that difference in speed and latency came from between the two dashboards. This is really important to providing a great experience for your business users, building trust in your data team, and fostering a data-driven culture. I hope you enjoyed that demo. I had a ton of fun recording it. I feel like these head-to-head speed tests are a great way to show off a feature like caching that is really meant to optimize performance. Next, let's talk about our integrations. As we know, a key benefit of using a semantic layer is to ensure that the metrics that drive your business decisions are consistent, regardless of what tool they're queried in. The dbt semantic layer has native first-class integrations with a number of analytics tools, and we're excited today to share that the Google Sheets and Tableau connector for server and desktop are now both GA. You should now be fully confident in taking these use cases to production with new and improved collaboration workflows in each. As part of the Google Sheets GA, you'll notice a few collaboration and productivity enhancements. You no longer need to trudge through rebuilding queries, and instead can leverage in-app save selections to pick up where you left off. You can also enjoy faster time to insights by using saved queries as a jumping off point to explore your data. The semantic layer GUI in Google Sheets now matches the functionality of our APIs, so any dimension you query in Google Sheets can be rendered as if you were using our APIs to query. With the Tableau desktop and server GA, we support relative dates and parameters, save queries for efficiency and collaboration unlocks, and are incorporating the full capabilities of our APIs into the Tableau front-end user experience. Our Tableau GA is an important milestone in our partnership with Tableau and our path towards being supported on Tableau Cloud. And a shameless plug, if you're interested in using Tableau Cloud with the semantic layer, please talk to your Tableau rep so that they understand the urgency of getting integration stood up. Nothing applies pressure to a product team like hearing direct customer feedback, and we really appreciate it. Backing up, a big reason to invest in a semantic layer is to get out ahead of governance and maintainability issues. We want to take complex logic that was once written in SQL or BI tools and centralize it in dbt Cloud, making it governed, managed, modular, and usable wherever your teams consume data. Much like the dbt ethos, the dbt semantic layer allows you to build metrics as modular components that can be built upon and referenced. As a quick example, let's take a look at the manual old school way of defining and querying metrics. Here's a definition of revenue that one of my data engineers dutifully, but probably not so expeditiously, built as a roll-up table in dbt. They're manually denormalizing the data as part of their DAG. And then they may have applied additional logic to these calculations in a downstream BI tool like Tableau. From a governance perspective, there's no possible way that your team is going to be able to maintain this metric definition. Drake says no thanks to this type of DAG. By building and centralizing these metrics in the semantic layer, you're drastically reducing complexity while also improving governance and security. Instead of creating a roll-up table and applying additional logic in Tableau, you're creating a modular fact and dim table, and then letting the semantic layer do the aggregation and joins or denormalization at query time. This leads to a clean, short, and maintainable DAG and central metric definitions that you can federate out to your BI tools. Drake says yes to this type of DAG. And Wonka also approves. The dbt semantic layer is powered by Metricflow, a flexible SQL query generation package designed to streamline metric creation for diverse business needs. And we continue to make improvements to Metricflow to make it even more powerful in helping teams collaborate around metrics. An example that we're excited to launch today is a new feature called Metrics as Dimensions. There are situations when you want to reference a metric in the filter of another metric. For example, at dbt, our definition of an activated account is an account that has more than 5 model runs. There are 2 metrics that we need here to create this definition of activated accounts: model runs and accounts. Here's the Metricflow specification of how you would define a metric like this, where you would put the data model runs scope to the account entity as a filter and say count up only the accounts that have more than 5 model runs. We render the metric filter as a subquery and then join to the outer metric query on common dimensions. Instead of needing to write this logic into your DAG, you can scope it directly to the metric it applies to, making it much easier to maintain. This is just one example of how we're investing in metric flow to make it more powerful and flexible. There are a lot of other things on our roadmap, like supporting sub-daily granularity, time zones, custom calendars, more dynamic inputs and metric definitions, and many more, so that your teams can build and consume metrics with more velocity and accuracy, and optimize governance and productivity as you make data a central part of every business decision. Thank you so much for listening. Now I'm going to pass it off to Jeremy to talk about one more exciting collaboration feature.
Thank you so much, Jordan. I'm excited to round out the presentations today with a little bit of review and a little bit of what's new, also in the realm of collaboration, but building on top of the themes we've already established around control and quality, and that is starting with dbt Mesh. If you didn't catch it a few months ago, dbt Mesh is a whole bunch of things. It's a pattern for collaboration at scale in dbt projects, multiple, large, small, everywhere. And the mesh pattern is now generally available. So thousands of dbt projects have already adopted model governance capabilities around access contracts, versions, dependencies. That's all old news. It's been out for several months now, and we have many people using them. We've also rolled out things like job completion triggers across projects, things like staging environments to enable data isolation, column level lineage across projects, and a bunch more things that are still to come in the coming months. I'm excited to show you some of this in a demo in just a few moments. But taking a step back and remembering and reviewing, what is dbt Mesh really? Well, it's enabling domain level ownership of data without compromising governance or creating silos. The interfaces between these projects that you're seeing on the right are well-defined, well-contracted, and they're the points of handoff between, in this case, the platform team, the finance team, and the marketing team. We've come along and sliced up the monolithic project you see on the left, but the references across models are still just ref. It's still just dbt. And going back to where we began today's presentation with my colleague Grace's journey into the Wonka multiverse, I'd like to adopt for you all the guise of a member of the finance team at our chocolate factory. Again, we've sliced this up so that now Gene on the platform team has laid the foundations. He's really made it possible for all the Wonkas who are going to come after. Grace has done better marketing for dbt than I think anyone has in a long time. And me, well, I guess I'll just have to be your Timothée on finance. Let's go on a journey together, shall we? And please ignore the word Jaffle in the video you're about to watch. Rebranding takes time. So here we are on the finance team of our chocolate factory. We have some dependencies on the platform team upstream, as well as some folks who are using us downstream. That's Grace in the marketing team. I can jump in here and see the full lineage of my project, including these models like orders and order items, which are public. These are data products that are mature and reliable, and other folks can take dependencies on them. And I know that they're mature and reliable because they have contracts enforced. That means the set of columns in this model is guaranteed to be a stable set of names and data types, as well as tests or constraints enforced by the data warehouse. Jumping into the Cloud IDE here, you'll quickly see that we've got this products model where I've already been making some changes around profit margin, adding that in so my colleague Grace can take advantage of it. And I'm compiling this cross-project reference, which just works, and it compiles to the staging environment of that upstream platform project. What does that mean? It means that if there's sensitive data in the production environment of the platform data, maybe about our secret ingredients, we don't want every developer to see that sensitive data when they're doing development. So we can resolve references both in this project and to other projects to the staging deployment of those projects instead. Pretty neat. So now that I've got my staging references working well, and I can build my orders model without needing to build anything upstream, both those cross-project references as well as the things that I am using deferral to avoid building unbuilt upstream dependencies. I can preview this model and it looks pretty good. I've decided that I don't really care about the food order column. I prefer the words yes and no to true, false, or 1, 0, and I've added in profit margin. And yet when I go to build this model, what happens? it seems to fail because I had a contract. I had a promise to Grace and to her team about what was going to be in this orders model. And this isn't some other tool or some data contract living in a text file or a proto schema somewhere else in some other chocolate factory in the world. This is in DBT. It's all the same tool. It's all the same workflow, quality and control throughout, collaboration throughout. So what I'm going to need to do here is yes, no, my Boolean column, bring back is food order, since it seems like the marketing folks may have been depending on it, and then add in profit margin as a column in my YAML definition as well, my contract, with a data type as well as a description, because it's a good idea. And if I really wanted to, I could actually make a new version of this orders model. I say there actually is a breaking change. We no longer want is food item. We need to change the data type of is drink item. I could, in this case, I can make the change in a non-breaking way. So that's what I'm going to do instead. But just know this is an API. It can be contracted. It can also be versioned. And we can put Grace and team through a deprecation window to make sure that it doesn't break on them overnight. So I'm building into a good place now. And once I've done that and deployed this model into that staging environment, I'll actually be able to check it out in the staging view of dbt Explorer. I haven't deployed it just yet, but as soon as I do, you'll see those changes showing up in that staging tab. Now, one more piece here, in addition to the staging environment that you already see, is the way that we can link together jobs within and across dbt projects, thanks to job completion triggers. In this case, the job that we're looking at here was triggered to complete, or triggered to run rather, on the completion of that mesh platform staging deploy. We can do the same for production, and Grace and the marketing folks can do the same for us. In this way, we can have a deployment pattern that looks and feels a whole lot like the mesh we see in front of us today. It's a pattern for collaboration across development, deployment, all the way through. That's dbt mesh in our multiverse of chocolate factories. Thanks for bearing with me. A couple of things that are new that you may have caught in that video: job completion triggers across projects, staging environments for data isolation, as well as some things that are coming next, things like environment level permissions and warehouse connections to make it possible to keep projects unified and have a scalable approach to multi-project workflows, easier private package setup so that you can share reusable code, macros, utilities, in addition to how you can already share data sets and data products via public models. And we're always baking more. We're talking to mesh customers now about more flexible access levels, bidirectional project dependencies, smarter orchestration of projects, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to be part of the fun, I'm very happy to have you. Well, that's the demo I had for you, but the slide is telling me that I've got one more demo still to show. And, you know, it's interesting. We're talking about patterns for collaboration across all of the people who are doing data work and using dbt at an organization. But the question remains, what about those folks who are doing data work not in dbt? Well, a couple of years ago, there was the matter of people who want to write Python instead of SQL. We added Python models, lo and behold. Okay. There's been people who want to do work in VS Code instead of in the dbt Cloud IDE. Lo and behold, the VS Code extension and the Cloud CLI. What about people who know how to do some business logic definition, maybe even some lightweight data transformation, but don't really know how to sit down and stare at the blank page and write some SQL? A few months ago, we started talking to data teams around the globe, and we heard a consistent theme. dbt was helping them improve the quality, the reliability, the speed with which they could build transformation logic. And yet, for some analysts, jumping directly into a dbt model was still unfamiliar and challenging. Teams might have had low-code transformation solutions to help, but these are really difficult to govern, to test, to version control. The code within them was unreliable. This lack of centralization creates risk and reliable metrics, and yet the work doesn't stop. Members of the business who need to be defining key business logic, folks like me right now, they still need a place to go and help them write some SQL. So this is where the dbt visual editor changes all of that. All of the transformations you're about to see in this demo, thanks, Greg, these are all going to compile down to SQL. They're going to be version controlled within a DBT project. With DBT Mesh, you can control access to specific models. You can create a sandbox for teams to work in so that they're not creating all of these models right within the hub. The visual editor works whether you're creating a new model or editing an existing one, and it has an interface that's familiar to anyone coming from an existing low-code transformation tool. Let's take a look. First things first, the canvas in front of us. This is a single DBT model. I'm going to modify it by dragging and dropping a few different other DBT models into it. These are my starting points, my building blocks. In this case, stage GitHub users, and I actually want to join in stage GitHub user emails. You see, a little while back, we changed the name of our company. We used to be Fishtown Analytics. Now we're DBT Labs. We've grown up a bit. And I'm curious to see how many of the commits in our public GitHub repositories are still associated with Fishtown Analytics email addresses rather than new DBT Labs email addresses. So I've joined these two tables together on the common column, user ID. Maybe you caught that, to join operator. And then what I'm going to do now is add in a formula to take from the email address the domain of that email. Now, maybe I, again, focused on the business, don't know offhand the SQL or even the Snowflake specific SQL that's going to enable me to do that, or Databricks specific or BigQuery specific. So I'm just going to ask for a little bit of help. See, similar to the AI assistants you saw earlier in today's presentation, it's AI assistants for SQL. In this case, splitting apart the email address into its domain so that I can really quickly filter on that domain with another filter operator. And then in a moment, we'll be able to preview the results, as well as at any point along the way, view the compiled SQL that's actually being created. So far, all I've done is visually represent the transformation I want to happen, as well as asking in plain English for the business logic that I want to apply in order to turn email addresses into domains. Now, all I need to do is filter down to Fishtown Analytics and dbtlabs.com. If I want to change this filter later on or remove it entirely, I have the right to do it. And I can see at any point along the way the exact previewed code in terms of compiled SQL, as well as the output of this transformation. Finally, let's do a really simple aggregation. Nothing too fancy here. This is no replacement for really writing SQL, especially when it comes to things like window functions, trailing 7-day aggregates, et cetera, but just to be able to group up by email domain and then count by the number of contributors. Well, there we have it. A couple hundred folks in dbtlabs.com and just under 100 who still are affiliated with that old fishtownanalytics.com. I know I might be guilty. Now, the visual editor isn't just for creating new models. Let's actually look at an existing model that we already have in our project in dbt Cloud. In this case, a model about Pendo visitors. Pendo is the tool that we use for NPS, Net Promoter Score tracking in dbt Cloud. There's plenty going on here, but again, maybe I'm looking in Explorer and I don't immediately have the facility to understand what that code means. Well, there we have it, a visual representation of an existing dbt model in a way that makes it a little bit easier for me to understand, as well as click in at any point along the way and see the previewed output. That much easier to debug, that much easier to split into components, that much easier to see the compiled SQL generated bit by composable bit. If this sounds awesome to you, as I hope it does to many of you, we'd love to hear your input or your feedback, your thoughts, your concerns. Reach out to us and we'll see if your use case is a good fit for the visual editor for dbt, remembering that this is a low-code interface to the same dbt you know and love. It's all code, it's all in version control, it's all testable, documentable, meshable at the end of the day. That's low-code development in dbt Cloud. Make sure that everyone on your team can contribute safely in a way that's tracked, that's visible, where nothing gets lost, but the people who are closest to the context of the business can actually provide that context, ultimately in the form of code. Now, everything I've shown you so far, and everything my colleagues showed you earlier is possible because of the platform that we are building in dbt Cloud. I want to spend a few minutes at the end here talking about that platform because it's what makes it all possible. And one of the main goals of dbt Cloud is to abstract away the maintenance burden required to run dbt by providing a fully managed SaaS solution on top of it. So similar to other SaaS tools you use, Salesforce, Databricks, Snowflake, whatever they may be, you don't have to think hard about the version of the runtime underlying the capabilities of that platform. But we want dbt Cloud to feel the same way. Where dbt version upgrades historically have taken time, have required overhead and a lot of coordination among a bunch of different teams, recently we introduced the option to automatically keep your dbt Cloud environments and jobs on the latest version of dbt. When you select this version, you'll be off that version treadmill for a good long while. You don't need to think about upgrades. Let us handle the maintenance, the testing, the piping and plumbing work for you so that you can stay focused on what matters, building, testing, sharing valuable data products to your organization. We want everyone everywhere to be running on the latest and greatest, and we want to also be able to provide the same great dbt Cloud experience to all of our customers across all instances of dbt Cloud. So to that end, we're also rolling out our cell-based architecture over the course of this year. This has already been deployed worldwide, featuring multiple redundant, fully equipped cells in different regions. It means that new features and fixes will be rolled out to all customers at the same time. There isn't any distinction now between words like single tenant, multi-tenant, different cloud providers, and it's characteristic of a mature enterprise software across the industry. We expect it to lead to a lot of benefits as we roll it out to more customers over the course of this year. Stay tuned. It's SaaS, it's multi-cell, it's more mature and stable than ever before. Oh, and did you hear me say different cloud providers? Because we're building that same great dbt Cloud experience on different clouds, including Azure, a deployment coming very soon, beta later this summer. You heard about dbt Cloud support for Synapse and Fabric. We're working closely with Microsoft. We're taking seriously this expansion opportunity for all of our folks who are all in on the Azure ecosystem. That's all I've got for you. We talked about control and quality for our super users like Grace at the beginning, as well as the way that we can connect and expand that data availability to more people through end-to-end orchestration, through the semantic layer, through dbt Explorer, and finally, patterns for collaboration around dbt Mesh and a coming soon low-code development experience that allow you to invite more folks in to the powerful dbt workflow. Bring them into the fold. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you are more interested than ever before in trying out dbt Cloud if you haven't already. We have regional bi-weekly demos. You can chat with a dbt specialist, and you can get started with a trial as soon as you'd like. Thank you so much, everyone.